infrastructure cost is becoming, the silent killer. It's kind of like a bait and switch that after you burn through threading, the cost goes up through the roof.
So it generated thousands of API calls, which led to several €1,000 bill.
AWS, Azure, Google, the GPU price, if you just focus on AI, because that's where our focus is, the price is 2x, 3x of Atlas Cloud. I believe this is more than a gold rush. We haven't seen anything like this before.
No, you're absolutely right.
It's more than the industrial revolution, it's more than the discovery of oil, it's more than the invention of automobile. It's really, it's more than the invention of the degree itself. So we want to provide an easy UI UX and API interface.
Atlas Cloud is the first elastic AI platform that automatically scales from 0 to thousands of GPUs in seconds and back down when you don't need them.
Try to use that in every aspect of your business because it's a free or very low cost advisor to you. You have done a fantastic job bringing very interesting founders and opinion leaders, not just to talk about theoretical things, but also talk about practical things. Many of the startups, the hardware cost is over half of their cash flow. If you below that to 25%, 30%, they have a much higher chance to succeed.
Infrastructure is very important, and people need to understand the compute side, your customer relationships, your sales information, your data, your interactions with your customers. That's the value, and you want to retain control of that.
Some enterprise using, many of them are, starting to think about deploying a private cloud, right? Making sure data never leaves the either premise or the private data center.
All right, everybody, welcome to the AI Space Podcast. I have another awesome episode. I have Jerry Tang, CEO of Atlas Cloud. Jerry, tell us what we're going to cover on this episode.
Yeah, we talk about how you can use the AI infrastructure in an efficient way. How Atlas is in the mission of making AI more accessible, and how you can use AI to improve your AI strategy.
Awesome. AI isn't just a future; it's a force rewriting the rules of business, wealth creation, and society. If you're a founder, innovator, or technologist, this is the AI show for you. The question you have to ask yourself is, will I blaze a path, follow the crowd, or be left in the dust? We're thrilled to have Jerry Tang, CEO of Atlas Cloud. Atlas Cloud is the first elastic AI platform that automatically scales from 0 to thousands of GPUs in seconds and back down when you don't need them. The company provides Inference model API library with 50 plus optimized models, on-demand GPU instances, fine-tuned platforms, and AI native storage, all designed to solve what Jerry calls the three killers every company faces: cost chaos, performance crashes, and complexity overload. Jerry brings a unique perspective to AI infrastructure, moving from managing 50 billion plus in real estate deals to building the Uber of GPUs at Atlas Cloud. He shares how 70% of AI startups burn runway on compute instead of talent, and how his elastic open source driven approach delivers 70% cost savings with 3x performance gains. Jerry reveals his contrarian philosophy, prioritizing people over hardware, democratizing access to open source models, and why delusional confidence was key to leaving banking for AI. I'm Sanjay Kalluvilayil, founder and CEO of Stonehaas Advisors, your trusted advisor for AI founders and businesses focused on go-to-market strategy and execution. Hey, Jerry, first of all, welcome. Here on the AI Space Podcast, we highlight game-changing insights that drive innovation and scale business initiatives. We just jump into it. What do you see as the hottest trends in AI?
Sanjay, thanks for the opportunity to join AI Space Podcast. I'm a fan of it. To answer your first question, what's really interesting in 2025, and Johnson has been saying it as well, is AI inference is starting to take over the load of GPUs. In the latest conversation, Johnson mentioned that 40% of GPU loads are allocated to inference versus 60% in training, which really means AI is being used by startups or enterprise, or guys like OpenAI chatbots. The usage seems to spike in 2025. The other thing I want to say is infrastructure cost. is becoming the silent killer, right? As the usage goes up exponentially, the cost for AI native startups is also going very very high, and versus talent, investing in talent, AI startups are investing a lot of money in hardware, which is basically a commodity, which kind of in my mind it doesn't make a lot of sense. uh, Long term wise, short term, yes, you need a GPU to serve your customers, but long term, you need to invest in talents. Um, the other thing is that's really kind of keeping me up in the night is the concentration of power in the AI space. If you look at Open Router, which is a routing website of AI inference traffic, you can see out of the top 10 models, there's only one open source model. Everybody else, everything is from either Google, OpenAI, or Claude. So it's currently dominated by hyperscalers or OpenAI.
I appreciate that, and we'll definitely dive deeper. What do you see as the top AI strategies to grow and scale?
I was just talking to a friend of mine. He was a CFO of a public company, pharmaceutical company. He was from a finance background. Was a banker in Bank of America, the healthcare sector. He was never a programmer. I met him recently, 3 months ago. We just caught up. We all went to Columbia, and he told me he has been programming in the past 3 4 months. I was like, "What the hell are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I've been using Cursor, and I'm using ChatGPT, Gemini 2.5, and OpenAI to help me to create an architecture, to create a financial AI that can help me to create a high quality investment memo that would typically take weeks for analysts associates to write, and now it takes me about 10 minutes to generate a high quality first draft investment memo. What I'm getting at, Sanjay, is you got to use AI, right, to grow the AI as a strategy. AI is the strategy. That's what I'm getting at for AI.
No, you're absolutely right, and we'll talk about vibe coding as we get deeper into the show. So, let's take a step back, Jerry. First of all, welcome again. So glad to have you here. I wanted, infrastructure is very important, and people need to understand the compute side. And I, wanted to get somebody that's building out in this space. So, could you tell us a little bit more about your background, how you got here, what led you into this foray into AI, and your path to Atlas Cloud?
Yeah, so it's a long story. I'll keep it short for you. I was a investment banking commercial real estate, which is a dinosaur industry, very traditional. People are proud to be a real estate guy. We always call ourselves we are real estate people, and we consider ourselves high finance, right, Wall Street guys. So when a company called Core Scientific called me up back in 2020, asking me to finance a Bitcoin data center, I was like, "What the heck is a Bitcoin data center?" I thought it was a total scam. So, and the CEO called me up. He was a COO in Microsoft for over a decade, vice chair of a Citadel Securities. So I thought it was a serious guy. I decided to spend quite a bit of time to study, what was Bitcoin, and I got into that. And from there, I started a data center development business for AI, right? When AI came along 2 years ago, and I saw some of these clients of the data center, they're just crushing in terms of revenues and profits. One example is CoreWeave. I thought that's a fantastic opportunity. I got dived in and created Atlas AI about 12 months ago.
Oh wow! No, I mean, especially going from real estate to Bitcoin, and now AI data centers. I think that's a good transition. So tell me a little bit more about Atlas Cloud, your service offerings, your target segments. What are some of the typical use cases?
Yeah, what Atlas Cloud is to bridge the gap between for the AI innovators, the enterprise users or startups, uh, for them, they're focused on building AI applications, and they don't want to spend time on tuning the AI infrastructure, the hardware, setting up Kubernetes, Slurm, and also setting up the AI models, right? There's a lot of work involved in that. So we want to provide a easy button for them, provide a easy UI UX and API interface, so they can use the AI instead of kind of trying to tinker in the black box of AI. So that's what Atlas is about. Ultimately, the goal is to really, I think, and go back. I think you mentioned democratizing, AI. By making it easy to use, accessible. I think our goal is to open the AI, the power of AI to everybody.
Like if just to put in context for some of our new folks out there, if you plan to launch an AI, you can decide, okay, I'm going to go buy my computer, my workstation. It's got to have certain capabilities in terms of processing. You may need to make sure it has an Nvidia GPU card, some of the latest software, etc. But then at some point, you have to be your own IT manager and be able to do that. And some people go into the cloud and work with these hyperscalers like Amazon, or AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, etc. Right? And there's some hidden costs, and we can get into that a little bit too, to be able to do some of those things. But then there's alternatives like Atlas Cloud, that may provide something easier setup and ease of use in working with some of these startups, right?
That's exactly right, Sanjay. So what's going on with the hyperscalers? That they have built a wonderful business. As you know, AWS probably accounts for over half of Amazon's profit, right? However, they are trying, being this big, they're trying to be everything to everyone. What we want to do is to be really focused on AI and provide the best AI to the AI users, the AI companies and enterprises. There's a lot of, if you dive in from there, I'll give you an example about somebody we talked to in a hyperscaler company recently. He was telling me there are three teams. There's the OS hardware team, there's the cloud Kubernetes team, there's AI team. The three teams were trying to build a function on their own without knowing what each other is doing outside of the individual teams. And they all build the same thing, and it's a total waste of time and money. And that is getting passed to customers ultimately, right? That's why if you go check the price of AWS, Azure, Google, the GPU price, if you just focused on AI, because that's where our focus is, the GPU price is 2x, 3x of Atlas Cloud.
Oh wow. No.
What's the biggest barrier between your AI concept and a market-ready product? It's the infrastructure gap, and Atlas Cloud closes it. Our unified platform is more than just servers. It's a complete AI ecosystem. Our advanced tools are engineered for sophisticated LLM training and seamless inference at scale. Use our console to build, test, and validate your models. Don't just deploy, innovate. See how at atlascloud.ai.
Yeah, and if you look at the recent stock price dip of Amazon, right? You saw that AWS, yeah, I think it was 60% of, typically around 60% of operating income, but it seems like their growth was only projected about 17.5% versus, I think, let's see, Microsoft Azure was like 39% growth and Google Cloud 32% growth. And they seem to be, and actually profitability's decreased, and they're trying to catch up on the AI side. So the Amazon stock has gone down a bit. I'm sure they may bounce back, but everyone's trying to get into AI. And now then you have now you go from the story of Nvidia, which is amazing, starting off in the late 90s and then getting into the GPUs, the graphical processing units with the gaming, and then the Bitcoin miners starting the GPUs. Because I remember 2017, I actually picked up some Nvidia stock and held on to it through all these splits. So that's a good thing for me. But and people were saying get rid of it and all this stuff. And with Bitcoin mining, listen to these talk shows. I'm like, I'm not listening to these guys. And then so Bitcoin mining, and now with AI coming out, now it's exceeded $4 trillion valuation. So that's an amazing story. And then you got AMD, Jensen Huang's cousins, actually, Dr. Lisa Su, and AMD is doing pretty well. So it's incredible how the hardware side has pivoted to AI, right? And that's where I think we're getting into our next gold rush, right? In terms of where we're going in the future.
Well, Sanjay, I concur, and I can't agree more. I believe this is more than a gold rush. I think this is something that's important for civilization, right? AI is going to be a unprecedented input to productivity.
Yeah.
Right. I think this is we haven't seen anything like this before.
No, you're absolutely right.
It's more than the industrial revolution. It's more than the discovery of oil. It's more than the invention of automobile. It's really, it's more than the invention of a computer itself, I think.
Yeah, it's well beyond what even the internet, right? But I do feel like this is a little bit like between 1998 and 2000, where we are with AI, right? In terms of the early nascent stages, all the companies coming in, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of companies starting, and there's already some folding at this point. We'll get into that too. But I do want to take a step back. You said, you did some Bitcoin, and that's another amazing technology. The Bitcoin paper that came out in 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto, whether they're the individual or a group, this peer-to-peer cash system that was born out of the Great Recession, to overcome the issues of fiat, the government fiat money, etc., and the proof of work and all the things that's done around that. It's amazing. I would like, maybe we'll get to it later, but maybe see how we can combine some of the blockchain technology with AI to take it to the next level, right? Any thoughts from your Bitcoin experience? Because I know those mining centers, they take a lot of, especially the heat generation, and you have to have cooling systems, and they make a lot of noise. And I'm sure you got some takeaways as you moved into AI, right? How to make these centers more efficient, right?
No, yeah, I think the Bitcoin thing was a great journey. As a matter of fact, we have a company that's about to become public listed. It's out there, the announcement. What I would say is, the Bitcoin paper is probably one of the most elegantly written paper out there. Very, very clever. The mechanism, how to create that security, right, for transaction is just amazing. But there might be a combo between blockchain and AI, right? Because if you think about a blockchain is decentralized, and AI, tends to centralize, if you will. I think that there's a good combination there that could make AI more accessible, and that's in our ethos.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, the papers. I think, and all the stuff that go to build Bitcoin, in terms of, you have to have an understanding of economics, energy, cryptography, mathematics, a lot of different things to be able to make Bitcoin work. So, first of all, Jerry, I'm definitely glad that you're here. What about the AI space podcast resonated you and say, hey, I'd like to be a guest on the show, right?
Yeah, again, it really fits what I have been kind of preaching, which is making AI accessible and practical, right? I think AI space is, I think you have done a fantastic job bringing very interesting founders and opinion leaders to this podcast. Not just to talk about theoretical things, but also talk about practical things, right? Dive in and provide interesting insights or advice that can be used for AI innovators.
I appreciate it. That was the goal. Is like, started this, how to give back, and I'm sure there's other people trying to figure out how to grow in this space. Why not bring the people actually in the trenches, working on this every day, and have the real world insights, and can share that. So I truly appreciate that. Before we continue, I want everyone to follow Jerry Tang, like, comment, subscribe to the AI Space podcast. That helps us to grow the show, have more impressive guests like Jerry. So definitely make sure you subscribe. Definitely follow Jerry Tang, Atlas Cloud, and we'll give you more information about that. And also, if you're struggling in the space and trying to build out, book a meeting with me, and we can, find a way to help you out. So as we transition, we want to talk about technology and all these things. Everyone wants to get into that. But I think the most important thing is really around vision, mindset, strategy, right? So in your path, you've held different, positions in real estate, venture capital, et cetera. Now you're a CEO. You've done different things. What do you think are the critical insights around vision and mindset strategy for long-term success?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have read a book a few years ago called The Grand Strategy, written by a Yale professor. Basically, he's saying you need to be be both like a hedgehog. Hedgehog is kind of a single-minded, and also a fox. Fox kind of adapts to the environments. So if you want to have a sustainable growing business, you do need to have some sort of conviction, some sort of a clear vision on where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, even 30 years. If you listen to Masa San, right, like he's talking about what's going to happen in 50 years, 100 years, right? So that's very important. Now, having only that is not going to make it successful. You really need to kind of be really realistic about where you stand, your capabilities, how that fits into the environment. How do you adapt to the environment, right? So in the example of Atlas Cloud, we see the trend of inference really taking over training in terms of the utilization of GPUs. We have made a decision to basically focus on making inference a lot more efficient, a lot more competitive, and a lot more affordable and accessible, all at the same time to AI users and innovators, developers.
Oh, that's great. And for those that aren't aware what inference is, I'll try to do my best, and you can expound after that. So these AI models are trained on a lot of data, and a lot of the compute power has been on the training side. So imagine somebody's taking an SAT, preparing for the students preparing for the SAT. They're doing all the reading all the books, and they're going to do this. But if they never actually took a practice test, they may know all the stuff, and they may take a practice test and do it, but you got to do it in the real world application, right? And so a lot of times, the stuff's been trained on general data like the internet, the Wikipedia, or a lot of general data, but it's not fine tuned for, say, an enterprise or a startup that wants to use it in real estate or finance. So then it has to be trained to be able to do it in real world situations, right? And so that's like so if you're studying for your MCAT or your SAT and you haven't actually taken any tests, right? How well are you really going to do? So just want to let you expound on that too. So
yeah, that's a great analogy. That's when the AI rubber hits the road, right? If you just take ChatGPT or any of these generic models, and if you don't have a good database, you're not going to generate a very logical or accurate result, right? So if you look at a few sort of mode, how you can use the AI models, right? There's a stage one, I would say, is sort of fine tuning a generic base model. So you're dumping a bunch of proprietary or sector specific data, and then you train, and it generates, let's say if you're a pharmaceutical company, right? You have combinations of DNA sequence or protein kind of structures. You let the model get really smart on protein or DNA. It generates pretty good result, but I wouldn't say it's like anywhere close to 100% accuracy, right? And then from there, if you want to kind of get closer to the 100% accuracy, use RAGs, right? You create a database where the AI model is going to retrieve whatever data you have. So things become a little more accurate. And then, when people kind of start to use that heavily, the RAG method, they discovered that they need update the RAG database, right? Which is becoming a heavy sort of a workload. So now, a new trend has emerged. Is model context protocol, where you can call live data, from, for example, a Salesforce client database, without having to design very intricate or complicated sort of interface with these external database. So with these sort of methods, you can kind of come up with more interesting, logical and accurate outcome.
Yeah, and going back to the student example, going back to inference too, some of these models get overtrained on the data, and they're very good at answering all the practice questions. But when it comes to the real test, they can't do it because what they've done, like the students, they say, "Hey, all the practice tests I got 100, but when I got on the test, I got like a 60." Well, because they've only memorized the questions, right? They haven't actually learned how to apply it in the real sense, right? And then when you talk about RAG, retrieval augmented generation, so you have then now you have a database that could be your sample questions or what have you, right? But then the question is, that was last year's sample questions. How do you get this year's? And the traditional method has been go in and get the API key from ChatGPT or some other tool and paste it into your application. And then you have to do all these API keys. But MCP, model context protocol, is designed to be like a USB-C, like a plug and play type thing, right? To simplify that process, to be able to pull information and not have to program it or each time to make sure it's going to work, right?
Yeah, I mean, to use your analogy, right? Like the RAGs are kind of like the cheat sheets, like physical cheat sheets, and the MCP is kind of like, now you have an iPhone, you can just type in and see what's the answer.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. So we talked about, now we've talked about, strategy and mindset. So as you started building out, one of the key things when you start anything is like getting your first set of customers, right? So we're talking about business scaling. Maybe we'll talk about first, how did you approach getting to your first customer base, and then how do you scale beyond that, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it's we're not doing anything, I guess, unconventional in terms of custom acquisition. We kind of look around the team
Mm-hmm.
and see who do we know, right? Usually that's how you can kind of have acquire the first customers. We look at our network, who are the potential customers we already know, or the people that we are not connected to. They have a connect to other people, so that's how you kind of get your first customers. From there, you start to do the sort of account based acquisition, custom acquisition, and then you go out with the SEOs, the typical LinkedIn marketing campaign, and have SDRs, really do a lot of follow ups. So we are trying to be innovative in customer acquisition as well. We are looking to build a sort of internal AI model to help streamline the process to make it more efficient without sacrificing quality.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And then you mentioned Uber like GPU orchestration, serverless, and customer case studies. So get a little bit more into that. What do you mean by Uber like GPU orchestration?
Yeah, so if you look at the GPUs, right, like they are individual chips, right? Each GPU card is one big GPU chip. They are typically in a server. There are like 8 GPUs, and then in order to make a very efficient system, you probably have to have hundreds of GPUs, even thousands, tens of thousands of GPUs. They're all connected with high speed, high bandwidth network. So how do you orchestrate all that to make it kind of work in sync that's the sort of the art of the GPU, right? Because if you think about a GPU has thousands of computers, little computers in itself, each GPU chip. And then if you have thousands of GPUs that need to be sort of orchestrated as a cluster, how do you make all that work? That's really the art of cloud infrastructure. It takes a lot of work and sort of tuning, fine tuning of the network to make the GPUs kind of work in sync.
Yeah, actually, I want to take a step back on the previous question. You made me think of something too. You mentioned SEO, which has been very important. I believe the CEO of Zapier, Wade Foster, mentioned that's how they got their start. It's like really figuring out SEO. But now SEO is changing because people are, instead of going to Google and just typing in their search, now it's going into like they're going to ChatGPT, Perplexity, and doing search. And so now even SEO is evolving, right? So, what are your thoughts on that, and making that shift?
Yeah, I think you need to kind of that there will be a new game kind of come up, right? You need to kind of now people is really familiar with the SEO game. Now the game is suddenly changed. It may present an opportunity for guys who are innovative in how to figure out how to optimize the ChatGPT, the perplexity of the world, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You have to now show up on those, and maybe instead of being true like paid sponsors, and more actually based on the actual content that people are producing, hopefully improves the quality of what shows up in the search too, right? And there's like AI overviews of companies now and different things. So I think it's going to open up a lot of new possibilities too.
Yeah, it would be interesting to kind of have AI against AI, right? Like how do you use AI to kind of game the AI to figure out what's the best way to have Atlas Cloud to come up when a AI company wants to seek GPU resources.
Yeah, no, I know what
That'd
you're
be an
talking about.
interesting experiment. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've done, when I actually use some of these LLMs and do even the AI space podcast, and something interesting is pull a biography on yourself or your company in some of these LLMs, and you can see what's produced, and and I think there's ways you can input data too. So let's get into the fun part. Technology. You've done quite a few things, but what insights can you share in terms of building a practical and scalable AI tech stack?
Yeah, so I would say this is not a easy thing, at least not easy as I thought, in terms of kind of building out a team that can really take it to a world class level. There are few and far between people that really know how to orchestrate and architect a efficient and reliable AI cloud system. So we spend quite a bit of time, kind of interviewing tons of people and honed in the current engineering team we believe is one of the best. I think that's really the key. There are probably, I would say, less than 50 people who had actual experiences on a high level, right, that have built these systems in the world, and we're lucky enough to have some of them.
So, for the startups out there, right? They're saying, hey, I could go to some of these hyperscalers. I'm thinking about building out on my own. You know, what's some, obviously besides the cost that you have 3x lower cost, how do they engage with Atlas Cloud in terms of, hey, the service offerings, or how do they get started? What's the best way for them to kind of figure out, hey, is Atlas Cloud something right for me, or how can I use it? Someone may not even know how to, you know, to get engaged or to plug in. So what's your advice to those folks?
Well, it's really easy to engage. You can kind of sign on our website. If you don't want to deal with the hardware or Kubernetes at all, you can use the Inference APIs. We have multiple models that are ready to deploy, and you can pay as you go. Pay by tokens, right? We probably have one of the most competitive price for these open source models. That would be the easiest way, to engage. You insert one line of code in your app, boom, you can start to use Atlas Cloud. Next is, I kind of alluded to is, if you are a little more tech advanced, you want to tinker with the GPUs. You can rent, the GPUs on demand on an hourly basis, weekly, monthly, from our console. If you are a little more advanced, you want, tens of nodes, you can reach out to our sales. We'll get you set up with, more economical terms, given your scale, so you can scale and meet your customer demands for AI.
No, that's great. And then as they get in, so what's under the hood, right? In terms of actually, what are they getting in terms of the hardware or the capabilities, etc. Right? Are there specific brands, or are you like a Switzerland of, in terms of what you provide? So just a little bit more, context to that.
Yeah, I guess you were kind of alluding to different kinds of GPUs.
Right, right.
Yeah. Right now, the majority of our offering is based on the Nvidia architecture. We are in discussion with AMD and a couple other sort of TPU providers. We are open-minded. We want to kind of give our customers the most efficient computers, right? Computing servers that we can find in the world. And the other component is, it's not just the GPU itself. I kind of talked about the network, right? The RDMA or the NVIDIA Infinity Band. You kind of need to connect the GPUs into one supercomputer, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing people don't really appreciate is, the GPUs that, for training or even for large scale inference is really a supercomputer. I think that's something that people didn't really appreciate.
Yeah, in a sense, you're making it. Maybe it's the wrong, like a distributed supercomputer in a sense. It's like a little bit more modular versus a monolithic machine sitting in a big office building, right?
Exactly, modular supercomputers. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and then in terms of, some people argue that GPUs are a little bit overkill for some of the things that you need to do for AI. So they talk about TPUs. I know that's a Google transaction processing units, and this is like for stuff that's more machine learning, and so maybe you can get the difference between GPU and TPUs.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think GPUs are typically two-dimensional. What these chips really are is they are matrix computational sort of computers, right? So that's why a GPU has thousands of cores. Each core does the same thing. So it's perfect for matrix computation. GPUs are two-dimensional. TPUs are three-dimensional. So TPUs to some extent is a little more powerful. That's why a lot of people, kind of expert have kind of said, Google probably have a infrastructure than some of the other competitors. There's also actually, Sanjay, there's MPU. There's probably like 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional chips out there as well to enable more advanced computations. But those are probably more like, kind of like in the high science area, like, nuclear science, physics, that sort of stuff.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, yeah, that's the first time I'm hearing MPU, and I usually try to stay, ahead of everything, and what's going on. So I'm glad that you brought that up. The other thing too, people think about Nvidia, they think about it as a hardware company, and there's what they don't realize also, there's something called CUDA, which is a centralized unified device architecture, right? Which is a little bit of software and some, and it allows you to engage, program, interact, and program to do some of the AI transactions. Can you elucidate a little bit more on that, and people that aren't aware about that?
That's a great question. So What CUDA is kind of related to the fact there's this supercomputer thing, right? When you have tons of GPUs sort of connected, so CUDA has some functionality that enable these sort of interconnectedness, but also allows for very complicated computation to be abstracted. So when programs developers they do their own kind of development, they don't need to understand all that sort of lower level logics of matrix computing.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you talked about earlier. We talked about some things too. Now you have a friend that's kind of like doing a little bit of vibe coding. And so, with vibe coding, for those that don't understand, there's tools out there that are no code tools that, whether it's Lovable, Vault, which are probably better on the front end. There's Cursor, which is, and there's different tools out there. And with vibe coding, you can prompt engineer. You can actually type in prompts like you do in ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, right? And it produces a code for you. And so if you don't know coding, it'll start generating a landing page or what have you, right? And then there's also a different tab for code. So if you do know code, you can go in. But I've tried a lot of these things, and I brought this up too. There's no easy button on any of this stuff, because it starts off great. The simpler it is, and I think you have to be. You don't want to put a big chunk of prompt. You'll overwhelm the tool. And there's also compute costs associated with that, because you can burn through the free package like that. You'll go into the super tiers, and then also some of the debugging. I found some of the issues is when you get into authentication, the actual database, and security. Those can be a little challenging on some of these tools, but I think they're still great to use, and they're going to evolve and get better. And there are people that are building things and actually starting companies using these no code tools. But uh, I'll give you like a story. This may relate, especially this episode's about compute and cost, right? So I'm on a project with a team. It's not a work project, it's a different thing, and I don't want to get into the actual what it is, but so we're using a Google API, and it generates a location. It generates, say, let's just use 100 locations, right? But we wanted some points of interest. And so to generate the point of interest, okay, it shouldn't be that hard, but for some reason in the back end, it wasn't pulling up the map. So it generated thousands of points of interest, which led to thousands of API calls, which led to a several thousand euro bill that the team member got, and so it was in euros, of several $1,000s. I offered to pay 1/6 of it, so we had to go back and make sure. Okay, yeah. So my advice to folks is, when you're looking at some of these things, it's cool to do all this vibe coding, all this stuff, but if you don't really think through the logic and the structure and how some of these things can happen, there's costs associated with that. And I'm sure you've heard some horror stories too. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I have heard of some of that. I think a lot of this is, because, when you sort of automate a bunch of things, it's hard to see what's going on behind the scene. There's a lot of looping going on. There's a lot of repetitive things being done. So some of them might be intentional, some may not be intentional. But these API companies, agent companies, they try to maximize their profits. There's one theory about that. I think over time it should improve. Maybe we can from our side, what we can do is we can create a very transparent billing system, which we already have in place. So you see kind of real time how much money you're spending, right? Maybe you can even create some sort of a break. Hey, you already spent X dollars, maybe do you want to kind of take a pause?
Right, right. And yeah, putting in ceilings and parameters on some of the things that are happening. And that's what I think, one of the things about these LLMs and even a lot of these tools, they tend to be a little bit more black boxes. So it's kind of, whether it's on the reasoning side or actually the creation side, of to be able to see the logic and what's being produced, right? And even when debugging some of these when you try debug, right, it goes through it rewrites the code instead of finding, instead of a programmer going to that pinpointing and finding the code. A lot of times it just reruns the code, and then it creates some of these errors. So it's kind of interesting. So in terms of your evolution in the space, are you getting into agentic AI? Or as others are deploying agentic AI, are they using your solutions?
Yeah, we're a AI infrastructure provider. That's our positioning. I do have pretty deep industry network and experiences, understanding of financial services, especially commercial real estate. So at a certain point, I think our goal is to provide the best AI infrastructure for that sector, for that vertical, which I believe is probably the biggest vertical out there. You're dealing with money.
Yeah. So yeah, the real estate and finance. So what do you see is where do you see AI going into a real estate or finance? I know in finance, fraud detection is one of the biggest use cases, and then people are trying to develop trading applications, etc. But in terms, real estate, there's different use cases there too. But what do you see as the evolution in terms of real estate and finance?
Yeah, I'll give you, maybe a couple of examples. One that's an obvious one is in real estate. There's a lot of people writing a lot of memos. So, for example, when you invest in a piece of real estate, you read hundreds of docs, probably tens of thousands of pages, and write up a 20, 30-page investment memo describing a project or deal is a good project or bad project, right? With key information. So that can use some AI, and I think the companies are already using AI, probably not in a systematic way. So our goal is to create a product, right, that it can really take some of the best AI features, plus our understanding of the investment process in real estate, kind of blending into that agent. So that's one thing that can save a lot of time and money. Think about how many people you need to write that a single memo. Probably dozens of people, including internal associates, external appraisers, lawyers. There's a lot of people involved. Um, Another thing is sort of eliminating some of the redundancy. I'll give you an example. I was a banker. When a loan comes in, right, you have the borrower providing information to usually there's a intermediate, a broker, a mortgage broker. They will write up a mortgage memo, and they would send to the banks, right? So we will get that memo, and we will read it. We will write up our own memo, and then the banks will also sell the loans to the bond investors, and the bond that will be a bond memo, and the bond needs to be rated. Rating agency will need to write a memo, and the finally, the final sort of the LPs of these bonds, they will also have their own internal memo. So there's a lot of layers going on. There's a lot of waste. I think AI can definitely come in there and cut a lot of that redundancy. And that's true for almost every vertical in financial services.
Gotcha. No, and I appreciate that. So we talk about democratization on this show, and we've alluded to earlier. What do you see as the key challenges in making AI accessible to people from a variety of industries, perspectives, experiences, backgrounds? How can we bridge this gap?
That's a tough question. I think AI space is doing part of that, right? By having people kind of talk practically how AI is being used. Um, from our role in Atlas Cloud, what we can do is to make the AI tools really easy to use. right? Make it, the UI UX very intuitive, so they don't need to kind of spend hours to figure out, this parameter or that parameter in this page that's like 10 layers below the main page, right? That's how some of these hyperscalers are. I think that that's one thing that we will be focused on. The other one is really lower the cost, right, as much as we can, but also sustainable for the business. I think that's another main thing. If you think about it, for many of the startups, right, the hardware cost is over half of their cash burn. If you can lower that to 25%, 20%, they have a much higher chance to succeed.
Right.
And if there are more successful startups, it will make it the AI more democratic, more accessible. There's more competition versus there are only a few, concentrated players.
Yeah, and then also, we talked about a recent episode. I felt a little cautious when I talked about the last episode with the CTO of AI of Cognizant, Babak Hoja. We talked about these $100 million bounties out there for AI talent, right? And I think you alluded to some too on closed source type groups where now they're poaching talent from different companies. You heard, or people are leaving companies in startups, Windsurf, and then AI researchers are trying to be poached from different companies, right? And that decreases competition in some sense too, right?
It does. I mean, it's that's creating oligarchy essentially, right?
Right. Yeah, and those are the things like, and I think it's important for those of you that are startups coming out. And one of the key, I think the initial costs were people trying to figure out the LLM side and the training and the inference and all this stuff. But that's the LLM side is kind of like the cost. It's easy to get in on that side, but it's really important, I think, coming out of this episode to understand the cost side of this stuff, where it's on the hardware and the compute, and how is that going to affect your profitability, right? So, what insights can you help some of these startups that are trying to just get into space and wrap their head around how to figure out some of the cost implications? I know you've already alluded to some of it, but what else do you think is there that's important?
Yeah, I think the smart startups are already doing that, right? Like a lot of startups are lured by the free credits from AWS, GCP, or Azure, right? And after it's kind of like a bait and switch, right? After you burn through the free credit, your cost goes up through the roof. So I think most startups will kind of come off that once they kind of burn through the credits. Um, Maybe they use a percentage of that, but I think most of them are coming to guys like Atlas Cloud to have a more sustainable business model, right? It's like if you look at some of these internet business, right, like they are almost working for Facebook or Google. They spend a lot of dollars on marketing, right? That's why Facebook and Google, they make hundreds of billions every year.
And I think it's also important that people realize too, when OpenAI made the deal with Microsoft, right? They're using it for the compute side, and they're, because the cost for OpenAI on ChatGPT, etc., is, from what I understand, in order of millions per month potentially, right? But then there's now that friction has occurred where, okay, who's benefiting is from that relationship? Is it Microsoft, right? And then even the case of was it, I'm trying to remember now, Meta and Scale.ai, etc., right, with that whole thing. And now Google and others are extricating themselves from that relationship, because this compute is who's owning the data, who has access to the data, right, and the knowledge and the insight. So, by putting your stuff out to some of these providers, right, are you who's really benefiting from that? What are your thoughts on that?
That's why Sanjay, a lot of enterprises are very cautious about getting the data out to the public cloud, right? Because if you think about it, that's their probably the most important assets in the AI era. A
It's
lot of
like a
people,
digital gold in a sense, a digital platinum, or whatever you want to call it, right?
yeah, it's those data, probably before this whole AI thing, I don't think they valued these data. Now it's all gold, or maybe even diamond. So a lot of them are kind of looking at this and say them to themselves, we need to sort of own our own hardware, right? We want to run this data on our own GPUs in our own private, data center, right? In a sort of a private cloud setting. So that's one area we are going to kind of try to break into, right? When they are building their, 500 GPU cluster, 5,000 GPU cluster in their own private data center, we want to be the guy who can provide that software layer, the easy button, which can, set up the OS, set up the Kubernetes, the cloud layer, the AI layer, right? So they can start going using the AI or build apps on top of the AI layer.
Yeah, and that leads us into really we always talk about ethical and responsible AI. So how do we balance, AI innovation and fast time to market with ethical and responsible AI governance and development?
Some government regulation that's going to come out to regulate the industry. However, these days, as you and I both know, that there's a lot of lobbying effort put in by these big AI companies. Talk about OpenAI, Sam Altman standing next to Mr. Trump. I think really, to keep these guys honest, I think we really need to be a preacher of open source AI models, because if we can provide a very competitive product in the marketplace, they will have to abide by certain rules. I think that's really the key, and that's our mission in Atlas Cloud, to be the go-to AI infrastructure provider for open source models.
So how would you answer those that say, yeah, open source is great, and people can choose to use open source, but even a lot of open source models, there's quality issues in terms of control, especially when you use, say, some of these. If you go out to Hugging Face and use some of those models, there's not a lot of whole enterprise level quality, enterprise grade control, right? So, what's your response to those that kind of bring up that point?
Yeah, I think you can do a bunch of things to these models, right? There are, if your enterprise, you can use the RAG scheme, you can use the MCP scheme to ensure data accuracy and also compliance, right? So there are a bunch of tools that's out there that we can use.
Gotcha. And going back to what you said earlier, and we're talking about ethical and this whole thing. For those of you that are there building your companies, just remember that your customer relationships, your sales information, your data, your interactions with your customers, that's the value. That's whether it's digital platinum or diamonds or whatever it's going to be, and you want to retain control of that, and you need to understand your relationships and how. And then a lot of these companies, you know they provide great services, and they say they may have Chinese walls or siloed type things, but you need to figure out how to manage that right and get the right partner, because that's what's going to be critical in terms of creating authenticity and trust with your client base and customer base, right? Any thoughts on that last point there?
Yeah, again, it goes back to some of the enterprise using they already kind of start to think about this problem, and many of them are starting to think about deploying in a private cloud, right? Making sure data never leaves their either premise or their private data center, because that's the most important asset. The most important asset, probably more important than the current business model or anything, right? Or even employees. That these data are going to be the determinant on how they can thrive in the future.
Yeah. So I know we're coming up on time, so we always like to close out with any final thoughts, insights, encouragement for those that are trying to get out of the space, get into the space, trying to wrap their heads around this, or try and launch their business. Right? What's your advice or words of encouragement to those folks?
We are in an incredible era. I've been very active AI user myself. The more I use it, either in coding, in sort of coming out with frameworks, answering questions, the more I realize how crazy AI is in a good way. I think that's one insight I want to share. Try to use AI to cut short your POC timeline. Try to use AI to streamline your process. Try to use AI to think about customer acquisition. Try to use that in every aspect of your business because it's a free or very low cost advisor to you.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And Jerry, I feel like we can talk all day about, you know, cloud and compute in the AI space. We're coming up on time, so where's the best place for our listeners to learn more about Atlas Cloud or connect with you?
Yeah, you can go to atlascloud.ai, or you can come to LinkedIn. My name is Jerry Tang, Atlas Cloud.
Yeah, I also want to give a shout out to Nancy Burdett from your sales team. We met at the AI conference in the spring, and we stayed in touch, and she helped facilitate this. And actually, we're going to there's a Texas AI Challenge here in Dallas, and be connecting with her there to do some networking. So definitely want to give her a shout out for facilitating this conversation between the both of us.
Nancy's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And everyone, make sure to check out and connect with Jerry Tang. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Find us on your favorite podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple. Jerry, I'm so glad we got someone from the cloud and compute side. So I learned a lot from this episode. I can't thank you enough, Jerry, for sharing your insights with and your journey. Going from real estate, banking, Bitcoin to AI. So I'm your host, Sanjay Kalluvilayil, founder and CEO of Stonehaas Advisors. I hope you gained a wealth of game-changing, real-world insights to grow, transform, and scale to new levels and dimensions leveraging AI. I hope to see you all next time. Thanks so much. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Sanjay.